Hello, 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 a very warm welcome to all our friends, viewers, stakeholders, fans of Africa Rise with Susan West. It's a beautiful Sunday here today in London, and I do hope that wherever you are joining this stream from, that your weather is as gorgeous as we have it here today. So please do the needful, share, 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 invite your friends, send in your comments and questions if you have any, of course. I have my brothers in the house. Well, waiting to see Starman. Starman will be joining shortly, but I have my brother WSR1 TV waiting in the wings. I'm really excited to have him here today. And the topic, of course, is I have a little message from Dr. Arikana Tayombo Require and Professor um, Patrick Lumumba. So we will be discussing the reason France says they will not leave Niger or Niger, even though the government of the day have asked that they leave. France says that they are not they are not democratically elected government. Therefore, they will not listen or take heed of the request to leave the country. And I find that really perplexing. I find that so laughable. I find that as really desperate that a country will ask you to leave and you will refuse to leave. Of course, it's understandable that if they eventually leave, they will have no connection whatsoever in how they manipulate, control, or twig anything that is happening in Niger all the way from France. And of course, they don't have the liberty to send bombs from France in the air all the way to Niger. So basically, they don't want to cut the final umbilical cord as far as physical presence is concerned in Niger. And that's the reason why they're refusing to go. And of course, it explains and shows that they the desperate situation that they find themselves. So yes, like, follow, subscribe, and send in your comments as you may have them. After this broadcast is ended, we will also upload this to Facebook. We're still unable to broadcast to Facebook for whatever reasons we are yet to decipher. So let me bring my brother WSR1 TV on screen. Hello, brother, all the way from Switzerland.
Hello, good evening. It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you. I,
Yeah,
I
and I say hello to everyone who is listening, and don't forget to like and share as we move on.
yes, absolutely. It's much easier and better when you can just express what you're thinking as opposed to typing, isn't it? So it's
Yeah,
nice to have you
yes,
here.
of
You're
course, it's
always
better
there
when you can express it. Yeah,
typing
yeah.
and typing. Yes, so just before Starman comes on, let's just rub a little bit of mind on this issue of France being told by Niger or Niger to leave their country, and France vehemently just saying that we are not leaving. You cannot tell us to leave. Have you ever heard or seen or this is unprecedented. Niger is a sovereign nation, and they've said that we do not want you on our soil. Pack your bag and go. It's like having a visitor, making a visitor feel so at home, and the day you've had enough of the visitors presence in your household, you ask the visitor to leave and they're telling you, I am not leaving. Literally, that is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is, and what is happening now is what we never wish or expected to happen. And even France, the way they are, they don't believe that a day like this will come. But here we are, you know. France, they wouldn't want to go because of what they are gaining. But Niger is a different country, a country of its own. And when they say you should leave, you just have to leave. But because of all these natural resources, uranium, oil, whatever is going on there, they wouldn't want to go in a hurry. And like I said last time, I wrote last time, actually, I think what Africa needs is military forces, military leaders. Forget this idea of what democracy is better than military. No, the only way military will, the only way Africa can rise again, understand, and be what it's supposed to be, is when all these countries are being taken over by soldiers. One, when soldiers are in control, there wouldn't be effort, a basis here and there, and the idea of coming to steal natural resources won't be there. For instance, when Abacha was in Nigeria, I don't think anybody will come into Nigeria and start stealing crude oil. No, nobody will do that. But now we have democracy in Africa, but virtually democracy is not working in Africa. As you may know, it's not working. And with democracy, we are not going nowhere. We will remain where we are. But with military, these young boys coming in now, I think there will be a change on the long run. That's how I see it.
Oh, okay. According to you, that Africa needs military leadership right now, and some people will beg to differ. And I would like to hear the opposing views that will beg to differ. Welcome, Obi-Man. Yes, Obi-Man, welcome. Yes, we're waiting to see Starman. He'll be joining us soon. I'm sure that we will have other people join as we carry on. However, I have argued on a different platform, and somebody made this, explanation that made me understand, of course, even better that even though we wish that if we cannot free ourselves through democratic setting, that this will be the sort of opportunity that Africa would, need to win herself off Western, manipulations and in what's the word now?
Western entanglement.
Yes, entanglements and
Yes.
all that. And then, of course, it is true that right now the sort of coup or whatever you might call it in Niger is something that is by the people because the people support it 100%. But someone also made mention of the fact that there are coups that are also sponsored by these same Western people we're trying to win or push away from, fingering the politics and whatever that goes on in Africa. So if we are in support of military coups or military leadership, what if we finally then get on in a different country, get a military coup that is sponsored by the West? And in military government, there are no bureaucratic bottlenecks that people have to deal with. For instance, you see how ECOWAS first, threatened to intervene or attack Niger, and they couldn't just go in and attack Niger because of the seemingly democracy that we have. The National Assembly in Nigeria said to Tinubu of Nigeria, no, you cannot. We will not allow for that to happen. And then the other ECOWAS countries, of course, will also have their, national assemblies or legislators to, give a go ahead. And that in itself, can become something that prolongs the protocol of just getting up and one man giving a command, as it is attainable if it was military that was in power. Because if this was a military regime, one man at the head would have just said, go and attack. He gives the command and the military just follows, regardless of whether it is right or wrong. So would you say, yes, in Niger's situation, we welcome it, but if we blanketly say that this is what we should be having in Africa, it has its
Yeah,
consequences.
there's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about that. But in Niger scenario, in situation with the situation in Niger, we welcome that. We welcome that based on, because these people have been suffering. If you go to Niger, it's like I don't know how to describe it. There's no buildings, there's no development. You don't see nothing. Meanwhile, these leaders, these old men, had been there for so many years. So what we should be praying now is proper orientation and guidance for these young soldiers, like the one in Mali and Cote d'Ivoire. They are all virtually young, and I believe strongly that they will change things in Africa, just like Thomas Sankara had wanted to do. Coming to military sponsorship, there's no doubt the West are being sponsor most of these military coups. If you check most of these guys that took over, they were being trained by Americans. What we are being trained for is just for to overthrow government. Just that what happened that before the time, before they could be prepared to push them to took over this government, they took over the government on their own. And from my own perspective, the way I'm seeing it and the way I have seen democracy in Africa, I believe this young men will do better. And I wish that Africa overrun military overrun the whole of African nation, because there's no way democracy is working. For instance, you come to Nigeria, we are always hearing that we are one Nigeria, we are one Nigeria. But we will always we become one Nigeria. We are in a situation whereby maybe somebody from River State can rule in Jos, or maybe somebody from Kaduna can go down to Southeast and rule a state there. Then we can say that we are one. But the way it stands now, Nigeria is not one, and things will not gonna change. It's all about exploitation.
Okay. Okay. So there's also the possibility that maybe France doesn't want to leave because France is somehow poking Niger in the eye so that Niger will react and then they will have a reason to militarily attack Niger. Otherwise, what is the reason why the ambassador of France will refuse to leave Niger? If that was the case, how do you think the Nigerians will be able to successfully handle the situation by making sure that whether they leave or they stay, that they are inconsequential?
Um, Outrightly, they have the juntas have made it obvious to France that they are inconsequential in their country. But France, because of what they are gaining, they're not going to live in a hurry. And don't forget that the tension is growing, and the gas from, like last time I wrote it too, the gas from Niger is the basic issue here, because this gas trespass Niger Republic and route to Europe. If Niger get into crisis, this crisis, if they kick France out, with all these sanctions, if Niger block this gas line, which means the whole Western Europe will be in trouble this winter, because 100%, there's no way Putin will off. He has off the first one, the Nord Stream gas, and he will off the second one, and their only hope is Nigerian gas, which they were able to build within a very short period of time, and they're spread to budget
That was really quick. I was
very quick.
very
Because
surprised to
they
hear
want to
that.
have this gas. Immediately they have this gas, then they would go back to Ukraine and however Putin want it. But they still want the safety, because when winter comes and there's no gas for heaters and people will be dying. So they want this guarantee. But this guarantee is like it's slipping out of their hand right now. So what it will entail is outright war, because France, they're not gonna live in a hurry, even though by right they should go, but the way it is, they're not gonna live in a hurry. So Niger and everybody should prepare for the worst, because it's not getting easier, because there's something at stake here. Yeah.
Hmm. Well, there must be a way around these things. There must be a way around these things, and I would like to imagine. I'm waiting to see Starman turn up here, and so that we can get his view as well on if if France refuses to leave, if the ambassador of France refuses to leave Niger as he's been given 48 hours,
Mm.
you know, to, then what will happen? Because definitely we know, even the common and ordinary thinking person just knows that if force is used, France will use that opportunity
So destroy
to also attack
yes.
Niger. But if they don't use force, how else will they make that France leave? And what are the tools they have to frustrate the ambassador or the embassy of France in Niger to get up and go finally? You
Yeah,
know,
they can
so
only put him on house arrest. One, and outside that, there's no other way they can take him out, and which means France is ready for war, because a situation whereby ambassador refused to leave, I mean, it's it's all in the air. The war is coming, you know. But Niger, they have the right to detain him or keep him on house arrest because it's their country. But I mean, the best thing for France to do is to quietly move. But because of what is at stake, France is not going to leave. The provocation is getting there. In fact, the whole thing is just Ukraine war has eventually migrated to Africa.
That's what it's gonna be if it happens. Hopefully, it
Yes, it
won't.
will, and it will hit up. It will really hit up in Africa when it finally gets up. Because the way it is, I mean, France, what are you dragging there? You don't have anything there. You just have to go and let them handle their country the way they want, military or anything. They can make do with it. Okay, for example, look at Macron. How old is he? He's very young, but he can't find any leader of his age in the whole of African continent. It's not possible. It's not possible. So I mean, whatever that led Niger to took the military axis, I think it's a welcome development, and they should allow them because the people are happy with it.
Okay, so yesterday I was in a Zoom meeting where Dr. Arikana was, sharing her thoughts with us based on what's happening in Niger. Professor Lumumba was there very briefly as well, but they both agreed on one thing, which is, well, Dr. Arikana's idea is she refuses to even accept or call what's happening in Niger a coup.
Okay.
She says, as far as she understands, she refused to call it. She's uncomfortable to accept to calling
Yeah.
it a coup, but that this is a
He
revolution.
said it is what it is, a revolution. I mean, just
So
calling it a queue is well, they are putting on military uniform and they used to be in the military. But for me to say the way it is in the country is pure revolution because the people are down with them. People are not singing, "Oh, we don't want
exactly.
these people," you know. So it's a
So according
go
to
ahead, go ahead.
yes, according to when you have likes of Dr. Arikana, Professor P.L.O. Lumumba explaining how this should be viewed, then you understand how we have come of age, and this is an opportunity that must not be lost as far as getting France to be, France is that baby that you suckle and suckle and suckle, and it becomes a year old, 2 years, three, four. In this, in France's, it's he's over 100 and refused to let go of that breast that has been suckling it. Like this is a child that has become a parasite, so to speak.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know.
but I must say that what is happening in francophone African countries, I think people could have been expecting this kind of thing could have started in West Africa, because if you look at francophone, we appear smarter in everything with them. But I can tell you that the liberation of Africa might start from those francophone axis.
It's already
Yeah, yeah,
started, not
yeah. This is what
might.
I mean.
It's already
Yes,
started.
because
I would have imagined that such a thing, I would have thought the so called Big Brother, the one that calls themselves Big Brother, which is Nigeria, you would have imagined that such a thing would start from Nigeria. But
no, no,
no,
no. Nigeria is
it's a revolution. It's a revolution. And that's the way
that's the
I
way it is,
see it.
And there's Nigeria could have done this, but tribalism and ethnicity couldn't allow such happen in Nigeria. Because if I want to, the problem with Nigeria is that there is no single one person the whole of Nigeria now can, I mean, queue up behind. That Yoruba man will not say, "Oh, is Igbo trying to take over or South trying to take over?" It doesn't happen in Nigeria, and that is where Nigeria has a big problem. Because with the power and the energy of NSAS, Nigeria could have done something before now, even before Niger. But if you check that the people start withering when it goes to this ethnicity, Yoruba, they are this one, so everybody disperse, and we remain where, and the whole Africa has been looking at Nigeria, but Nigeria is not coming up. So basically, in Africa
Yeah.
need a change. Africa need a revolution all right round. I mean, all across, because this democracy is not working in Africa. It's working in Western world, in Europe, because their forefathers have made things happen and build their things. It's not working in Africa, and I don't support it. It's all joke.
Well, at some point, even a child grows up and understands the world and figures things out for themselves. So, Africa has never been a child, but I'm just using that as to describe that for whatever reason that they might have thought that she could not handle her her business herself. She has come of age, and now she says, "Leave us
Yeah.
alone. We will figure things out for ourselves. We're going to work out things. This is a family. Whatever that is going on the continent is a family affair, and we'll be able to sort it out ourselves. And you don't want that to ever see the light of day. Light of day. Moving forward, would you imagine that if, for instance, Niger decides to, use some kind of force to make sure that the ambassador leaves or puts him under some kind of house arrest where he's not allowed to leave his embassy. And if France sees that as an opportunity to attack, do you think that NATO will follow suit with France? Or do you think that the United States of America will support that? They have every reason to, but do you think they will?
If France eventually attack Niger, in the beginning, NATO won't be involved, and the American is not gonna get involved as well. But they're gonna hang on and see how it pans out. And what will they be looking at if Russia is stepping in? Then they can move in. But if France are just attacked, they will just allow it for between France and Niger to fight it out, which of course, which they know that Russia will be coming to defend Niger, and this is where the whole thing will bust.
Well, how can Russia come and defend Niger? Russia is already overstretched in Ukraine.
Yes, Russia is overstretched, but this is military. This is military business, and they can sacrifice anything they can because Niger is basically hoping on them right now, and they're not gonna disappoint them. So they will,
So, what about the other African countries that have shown
of
their
course,
support, like Mali
and
and Burkina
not
Faso?
forgetting private soldiers. Like if this thing happens, you can see some Africans rising up and moving down to Niger to fight for Niger. This is what it will tell, and this is a like this all these francophone African countries, they will do it because this will be a desert war. They know the terrain, and people like as is on some pages, people are already warming up, organizing themselves on how to move down to, because what happened in Libya is still fresh in every African's mind. So for any other external attack in any African country from the West will be countered by Africans, not just only Niger.
Interesting. I know that as a government, of course, Burkina Faso and Mali have shown
Yes,
support,
yes.
but having to hear that even the people themselves individually would want to, volunteer to support another African, that's an interesting one. I haven't thought about that was going to be possible, because usually on the African continent, we're always overwhelmed with our internal issues. We're already burdened with internal issues day in, day out. So take, for instance, Nigeria. We already have a lot of, as the citizens on their own are overwhelmed with economic issues,
Yeah,
Boko
yeah, and
Haram.
yeah, and
Yeah. So
don't forget, if this war starts, if Niger is being attacked by France, almost almost half of northern Nigeria will go in defense of Niger. irrespective of Nigeria packing that the leading ECOWAS to go and fight. These are their brothers. If in fact, we used to have a car business in Port Harcourt. So normally we pull car from Cotonou down to Port Harcourt, Nigeria. Do you know that sometimes we pass through Cotonou, pass through Niger? When you cross the border, you wouldn't even know.
You don't know where
No, you don't
Nigeria
know where
begins and
Nigeria
when it
begins
ends.
and where Niger stops. So as you're driving, before you know it, you're already in Lokoja, which means you're already in Nigeria. So there's no border; they are virtually one. So there's no way they can fight against their brothers, and then we go to defend them. So I mean, it will be France is just trying to. I mean, because Macron has been gotten almost everything wrong since he entered that office. He's not. I mean, he's getting it wrong because this one. What are you trying to prove to the world? You know.
He's not trying to prove anything to the world. Let me just take Obi-Man's read. Obi-Man says Africa cannot wait for Russian husbands, sons, uncles to bleed for it constantly. They have to learn to fight, which I totally agree. In fact, even hoping on whether Russia is going to come to your rescue is like you're still. For me, it shows a sign of weakness, like a little
Yeah.
child who has gone to poke somebody and run
To daddy
into
and
daddy
mom,
and
yeah.
mommy to save them. No, I don't want to view it like
Yeah.
that.
Not forgetting Niger. They have strong soldiers too. If you could remember, 2-3 years ago, they were the one that chased Boko Haram to an extent inside Nigeria. They have.
Mhm. That was Chad. That was
Is it
Chad,
Chad
wasn't
or
it? That
Niger?
was
Okay,
Chad.
okay, that's
That
okay,
was
okay, okay.
Chad.
But they're in the same region.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
So you see, when you were talking about what does Macron have to gain, Macron really has is not about gain or lose. That's not what it is about. It's the fact that this is a system. So whether it's a system that has been
For years.
designed for hundreds of years. Okay, so whether Macron is the president or not, the next person who takes over office will understand that this is the modus operandi of France when it comes to the relationship they have with their former colonies in
Yeah.
Africa. Okay, it's like foreign and the United States. Oh, I'm not sure what's going on with me. A lot of words are just not coming to me today. Foreign. Okay, I'll think of it. When Lord, somebody help me. Um,
Foreign affairs.
foreign. Anyway, when the sort of way United States, it doesn't matter whether it's a Democrat or a Republican who is in
Okay.
office. It's foreign their foreign policies. What's it called?
Eh,
Anyway, the policies that the United States have concerning other
yeah.
countries, it doesn't change whether you're
Oh yeah,
Republican
Democrat.
or you are
Yeah.
Democrats. Okay,
Foreign
foreign
policy.
policies. Sorry, that's the word I was looking for. Foreign policies. So basically, Macron as an individual is not the problem.
Yes.
If you look at it, Macron as an individual has a great relationship with
Of course, he,
Africans.
he was in Shrine
As an
when he visited
individual,
Nigeria. I mean, yeah,
thank you. As an individual, even though we're calling him because he
France. I
represents
said, yeah,
France.
he's the one in charge.
Yes. So one on one, it's like when Obama was the president of the United States of America. It's due to the foreign policies that they have that is greater than Obama himself. Obama would have been the last president we would have imagined that would destroy Africa because he's of African heritage, but he did because he stands and represents the United States of America. So this has nothing to do with individual the way an individual feels. It's
Policy.
about policy. And for France, it's not just the policy, it's the fact that the oxygen that
It,
France breathes and
it,
lives is from colonial,
it's at stake.
is from yeah, is from the colonial
Enclaves.
enclaves in Africa. So This is a life and death situation, so to speak, for France. Because the moment France loses every hold they have on the African continent, it's only going to take a matter of a few years, not many years. It will take a matter of 5 years and a decade, and you will see France struggling, and you will see them. Even now, you can see how things are panning out in France. Every other day,
Yeah,
every other
I
week,
mean, but
there is a protest in the streets of
of
Paris,
France,
of France.
but I mean, these people are blessed with these natural resources, and I mean, they should enjoy it for once. I mean, yeah, if France want to collapse, let it collapse. They have to find alternative means.
No, but we don't care about whether we're
You
just
know,
talking about for people who don't really
then
understand the need for France to
in
remain
Africa,
in
yeah,
Africa for France's sake. This is what it entails. This is what it entails. Literally, the oxygen that France breathes comes from Francophone
Franco, yeah,
Africa. Okay, so so they just have to imagine a world without taking from Africa. I was just saying to someone the other day, sometimes we forget that these so-called natural resources, we have it abundantly in Africa, but remember, there are natural resources that is deposited everywhere in the
all
world, every
across.
single place in the world, even in the United Kingdom, even in Britain here. They have gas, they have oil. The question to ask is, why did they refuse
Their
to
own.
mine? Why did they refuse to take from their own? Why are they willing to go that far and cause all those problems if they have it under their feet? And the answer might not be so far-fetched from the fact that as much as we go on talking as Africans how we have natural resources, we are degrading, destroying the land that we live upon, and it's not going to go on forever. It's only a matter of time before the land cave in, before the
The
land
whole
is
thing collapse, yeah.
destroyed. Yes. These mining, extracting, mining, extracting, mining, extracting. These Western people are not
They are not
foolish
stupid, yeah.
to
Yes,
understanding that they might have as much reserve as we have, but they're not touching it.
yes,
Why do you think in the Western world that when they talk about fracking and all the sort of things that people go on the streets
and protest
and
for that.
protest and say they will not
Yes,
allow it? So we should come out as Africans from that euphoric world, or that world where we feel like, God has just blessed Africa and we have, yes, God has blessed Africa, but there are consequences to taking away all the oil from the ground, taking away all the gas, taking away the uranium, taking away all of the gold and all of the natural,
no charge for paper. They call money just for paper. You know,
materials that. Yeah, Obiman says they, France, will not go down without a fight. It's not in the nature of Europeans. Yes, that's absolutely right. And Charles Udineye says Africa has been deprived from development and technology transfer to keep them weak and unable to put up any reasonable defense from issues such as this. It's bringing a bully to fight another. That is true. The reason why, even when we're having this conversation, that even you yourself will imagine that Daddy Russia should come and save is because we know that African nations have been put in positions where they can't. We have the manpower. We have, when it comes to the human resources, we
yeah,
have them. But we're living in a world where you don't literally have to stand in the bush or in the desert, only standing holding a gun to fight man
no
to man. This is a generation where
technology.
technology fights a
Yes,
war. What technologies do we have at our
none.
disposal? That is the reason why we're constantly dependent on someone else to come. However, it is what it is as it stands now, and because it is what it is, sometimes, as they say, the enemy of your enemy or of my enemy is my friend.
Yes,
So even though Russia might not
the
be
best.
the Father
Yes,
Christmas, the truth is, when you put them on a scale of what Russia can offer, as opposed to what has been obtainable with the West, and how you can use your
with Russia
partnership with Russia, get away from this
of the
stronghold of
West.
the West, then you just want to take your chances.
Yeah, because Russia can come with something substantial, something tangible, something they can keep on the ground, not just taking, you know. But the West, when they come, I mean, check out for years they have been mining oil in Nigeria. But if you go to Nigeria now, I mean, there's nothing like no fabrication industries, nothing. They don't come in with anything. It just bring machine just to be draining this oil. But I mean, China and Russia are, even though China will borrow your money to build some establishment for you, but I mean, they say when you present two bad things, there's tendency to pick one, you know. So in Russia can for now, Russia can be everybody can be looking at Russia because at the end of the day, we wouldn't be the way we used to be because these people had been there for a long time and nothing to show for it except extraction, exploitation, nothing changes, nothing was built. And I mean, it keeps on the way it is. And no, when a leader, when an African country got wanted to get someone who is capable of thinking by himself, he doesn't last long, you know. But when a dummy comes, he can stay 8 years. I mean, he can stay as long as he wants, but nothing changes. Things keep on. Just look at Nigeria.
Exactly. Just like one of the things, what you said now just reminded me of one of the things Dr. Arikana was saying yesterday, which is that when the West plots a coup in Africa, they support that coup and they don't, it's not a big deal
Yes,
for them that it's a military government is in place. You see, they have in the past when individuals rise up in different continents, different countries on the continent, they have somehow been assassinated, taken out, dealt with in ways that it it sends fear down the spine of anyone else thinking of, freedom of any sort. However, like Dr. Arikana said, what is happening in Niger, the reason she refused to acknowledge it as a coup, because she says this is the people. It is the people who have risen up and decided that this is what is
this
going
is
to
where
be.
it should be.
So, in a situation where the people rise up all around on the African continent, surely
It is written.
they're not going to send the CIA to kill
No,
every single
they can't kill
African
it.
because
They
this
can't kill
time it,
everyone. They can't kill
exactly.
everyone.
This time around, it's the people. It's not just one individual who they take out, and as they take out, the dream is
Yes,
dead. This is the people, and that's why this is a welcome development for most
I
Africans.
say
Not because we want military
no.
coups, but it's like you try to resolve an issue in the most civilized,
Wait,
diplomatic way, and it's
it's not
just
working.
not
Yes,
working. And your opponent refuse to give you any leeway to make to allow you to have that self-respect and self-actualization. And then your opponent is also a bully. And he's a bully not because he's stronger than you, but because he has, technology and weapons that he can use to bully you. And then it comes to that point in every man's life where they say that you can only be pushed back into the
for
wall
so
for
long.
so long. When you push and push and the person keeps
Fighting from the
giving,
wall.
keeps giving and push. Yes. And then you're stuck. When you are stuck in the wall, regardless of how weak you are, you will try to throw a punch or
Yes,
two. You will definitely
fight back.
want to free yourself. You will fight back because every living creature has that need to survive.
Yes,
And Africa has come to that point where the oxygen, someone has put you in a chokehold and your air supply is running out, and you finally go, I don't care. Because in any way I look at it, it looks like death
yes.
is staring me in the face. So now you fight, whether you're strong enough or not. But guess what? When situations like that arise, when you fight back, you surprise the bully most of the time, because the bully is always as strong as you let that bully be.
Yes, I
Do you
understand.
understand? So regardless of how we cannot even imagine how Niger is going to triumph over France, you will be shocked that Niger will, with the
They will put on a fight.
strength and will of the
Yes.
people and the support that they have from other African brothers and sisters around the continent and from the diaspora, that they will triumph, that they will prevail. Because I mean, there is no one in their right thinking mind that you will give paint this scenario of what's been going on in Francophone Africa and how France has been taking advantage of them. Even the French people, the
The
ordinary
ordinary people,
people,
they're
will not
yeah,
agree that this is
yeah. But
right.
I mean, they don't play part in it. Is the
Yeah, so I'm
yeah.
just saying that this is the point where, regardless of whether the Nigerians don't have that much power, regardless of whether Africans have what's the word, the bombs and the guns and the the sort of things that deters
In,
countries from
well,
attacking other
yeah.
countries. At the end of the day, Africa has its people and Africa has them in numbers. And when push comes to shove, the people will rise. And let's see, like Dr. Arikana imagined.
I just hope that France don't go into commit it because it's a blunder. I'm trying to call it a blunder because if they make mistake of attacking Niger, it will go as long as opening all old wounds, especially with Algeria. I mean, I think it's gonna spread. It's gonna spread a lot of things. You're gonna get involved.
Yeah, I see Starman is here. Starman, are you ready? Starman Alpha, one and only.
Hi,
Hi.
hi, is that Stanley?
Hey, John, I greet you.
Yes.
Hi, Washington. Hi,
Welcome.
thank you.
Yeah, so Starman, just before you came on, we were just talking about the fact that Niger has given the French ambassador 48 hours to leave Niger. And they say he says he's not leaving, or his country people or his president or his bosses have told him, you're not leaving, you stay put. And he looks quite desperate. He's obviously quite desperate that France will say that because it's a military government in place, they have no powers, they have no standing to ask them to leave unless a democratically elected government says so, which is quite laughable. Now, I was in a Zoom meeting yesterday with Dr. Arikana and Professor P.L.O. Lumumba, and Dr. Arikana says that she doesn't view what is happening in Niger as a coup. She she refuses to accept. She struggles to accept it or to describe it as a coup. This is a revolution, she said. Professor P.L.O. Lumumba agreed with the fact that this is how she views it, and it is true that the people have spoken, the people have reasoned. And she also, painted a picture of how it was easy to take out individual leaders from the African continent in the past, people like Thomas Sankara and his likes. But in a situation where the entire people in the country are the ones waking up to say no, and we don't want this, there is that possibility of an opportunity that must not be missed for a revolution that has started. Because of course France cannot come, or the CIA, or whoever it is who normally comes and take out these leaders who think differently and have the best interest of their people at heart, taking them out. You cannot, of course, come and take out a whole country. So that's where the discussion is. That's what the discussion today is about, Starman. So what's your view?
Um, so first of all hail Dr. Arikana, because that woman, I won't say single-handedly, was instrumental to disrupting France's influence on the continent. There's others. Another famous one that comes to mind is Yasmin. Is it Yasmin Yam or something? Um, But yeah, every, it's not just France. The Western civilization is desperate. They are on the brink of decline. Let me not say collapse. If I say collapse, people start, oh, there's something special about the West. They can't collapse. Like, you know, Rome, like people didn't think Rome was special, yeah, but Rome still collapsed. But anyway, so yeah, the Western civilization is on the decline. We also saw what happened with BRICS at the last meeting. Now, 42% of global oil is under the control of BRICS. That's not saying that the G7 or the West controls the remaining 58%. You know, it's just a lot
Mm-hmm.
of those countries controlling most of those remaining 58%. They just haven't joined BRICS yet, but it doesn't mean they're in the G7.
Right.
And many of them are queuing up to join BRICS. On top of that, there's the population. BRICS population is now, I think, 3 point something billion. How many is the West? It's G7. G7 is just barely just barely over 1 billion. You know, so and then all this running around in Ukraine, sponsoring people to go and kill themselves and other people, giving them. I mean, they've given Ukraine about $40 billion since this that's as the estimate I even saw a while ago. I don't even know how much it is now. $40 billion just to go and fight and kill people. Meanwhile, what happened to Build Back Better World initiative America was talking about? Oh, when they saw China coming into Africa, they thought, oh, wow, okay, we need to counter China's influence with infrastructure. Oh, okay, we're going to pledge $200 billion for Build Back Better World program to develop Africa. Where's that? Last I heard of it, it's been scaled down to 40 billion.
From
40 billion.
200.
So if they did fight this war in Ukraine, but even the 40 billion, the Africans haven't seen anything. But they are spending it in Ukraine to go and kill people is more of a priority. So the West is desperate. In fact, the whole thing looks amusing to me. You know, the way they are desperate, running around like headless chickens. They don't know whether they are saving the dollar. They don't know whether they should just let it collapse. They are trapped between a rock and a hard place. Now, this, oh, we Africans don't need coup. We don't like coup. I was
No,
going
we
to
like
address this in our other program. Yeah. Now, if I'm a young African growing up in any of those colonial contraptions called countries in Africa, glorified European countries in Africa, as a 12-year-old, I'm seeing all the corruption around. Or maybe my parents brought me up well, and I want a better life. By the time I'm getting to 19, I'm seeing the corruption getting worse. At this stage, I probably participated in election, the charade that's elections in Africa. By the time I'm making my career choices, and especially if this career choice involves emancipating my people, at this stage, after everything I have seen on the continent, like if I had the chance to go back and relive, I will not go into politics. Politics is a game, is a rigged game, especially on the African continent, even in America. Let's not fool ourselves.
it's the same
This
all
is
over.
election. You see this election nonsense they do. Where exactly has it worked in Africa? Where, you know, they'll have election, but the same person is in power for 30 years. You know, if I, like I said, if I had the chance, or this scenario I've been describing, the young man growing up, seeing all the corruption around him, and then making a career choice which involved emancipating his people, the army, so that I can have access to gun, because that's the language, psychopathic leaders and elite. If I don't even call them leaders, you know me, that's the language psychopath. So anybody that thinks Africans should just stay stuck in playing this game of rigged coups, I'm sorry. You've not woken up, let alone even smelling the coffee. Those guys in those countries were not stupid, especially Mali and Burkina. They were not stupid. They understood that they needed guns because they're not fighting small children. It's not small children. This is not kumbaya. After you finish fighting, you hug and make up fight. No.
No.
Mm.
So I don't know
Very.
where. Oh, we don't need coups in Africa. Hold on, you don't need coups in Africa. So Tinubu is there kicking off. Oh, democracy. We need to restore democracy. Oh, coup. We don't need coup. Really? You, Tinubu? Really? Okay, you that you did democratic election. Hold on. How many people died? How many people were killed in your election versus how many people were killed in that coup? No, seriously. How many people were killed in Tinubu's election versus how many people were killed in that Niger coup?
Niger's coup was a bloodless one, isn't it? And still, they make noise about it as though it was a carnage
And then
that
and
happened.
then the Niger coup, everybody, even down to the man on the street, has had his say. Oh, yes, yes. France out. We support the coup. Tinubu's election, when people were protesting that the whole thing was rigged, what happened to them? What did they tell police to do to them?
Yeah,
And this one that is telling you democracy, democracy. You see, when I say all these foreign ideas, none of them, when they come to Africa, for some reason they get turned upside down. From the democracy, everything gets capitalism, everything gets. It is only in Africa 7-year-olds are engaged in capitalism, digging up coltan so that they can eat. Every foreign idea, when it comes to Africa, it gets turned upside down. But then somehow, because they just point a gun at you, you may just function like that. You must operate. They point a gun at you, whether I like it or not. You must do
No
this
schools,
capitalism.
no
You
hospitals,
must
no
do this
nothing.
democracy.
It's terrible.
So, yeah, Tinubu. Well, look, like I said in the other program, I don't know what the people advising Tinubu, especially from the foreign end, are thinking. But hey, let's just see which way the cookie crumbles. We're just gonna have to sit back and see which way the cookie crumbles on this one. Because it seems like no matter how much people cry, shout, they are hell bent on looking for a way to start this war. I've said it.
Starman, I wanted to get your opinion. Sorry to cut you in. I want to get your opinion on the fact that I don't see very many choices that the military leaders have in Niger right now as far as expelling the ambassador of France if he's refusing to leave. And a lot of people have talked about it in the sense that they feel that this is France's way of really poking Niger in the eye and wanting them to react so that they have a reason for a fight.
I've seen. I've
So,
said this thing.
so
Yeah,
let me
yeah. No,
ask you,
Karen, Karen,
sorry.
Karen.
So, in the way you imagine things, Starman, because you have very wild imagination, I just want to know if Niger didn't want to use force to get him out just to avoid that scenario of France using that as an opportunity for a big fight, what other way do you think they would be able to um literally make France inconsequential, whether they still have an embassy in Niger or not, or whether there is a physical presence of France if the ambassador still remains? What are the other alternatives that it could use to get this resolve without looking weak. Because if they don't do anything about it, they're going to look weak.
Yes,
They're going to look like they're scared of
yes.
France because they've given 48 hours for the ambassador to leave. He says he's not leaving.
But,
If they don't do anything about it, they're going to
but
appear
you
weak.
see, me, if I was a general, yeah, I'll never be the sort of general that worries about looking weak. If anything, I'll even play weak most of the time, just so that you underestimate me most of the time. So, it's like when Putin had to withdraw from one of those regions, everybody was like, oh, he's looking weak, he's looking weak. Nah, man, he saved the bulk of his forces. No need to a desperate stand that's downright suicidal. So, short of Niger expelling the guy, regardless of what France wants or not, they can blockade him in his embassy or compound. Just say, okay, yep, you know,
House arrest.
cut off his telecommunication.
Exactly.
Just
Yeah.
show that, okay, yep, we don't want to use violence, but you can't
Yeah.
come and just dictate to us. This is our land. If we say no telecommunications goes in, it doesn't. If we say nobody comes out of this gate, you don't.
It doesn't. Yeah.
You know. And I've been saying this thing. There's war coming. There's a great war coming to Africa. I've been saying this thing. They've been setting the chess pieces up. What do you think all those military bases on the continent are doing? What do you think? What was that their bill in America they passed again? HR 7311. What was that about? Oh, we're coming to check Russia. Russia's activities on the continent. There's war coming. And they will keep poking and poking and pushing proxies and proxies till something erupts. Because if you read Brzezinski's that American, let me not call him diplomat, the guy was a warmonger. That guy, his book, The Grand Chessboard, where he was describing how America saw Europe. You understand that this is how America sees everywhere. Everywhere is like a chessboard to them. And in that book, he said that America needs to maintain chaos in Europe to maintain control. And this is how America operates. They use chaos to destabilize people. Problem, reaction, solution. So they create the problem, they wait for everybody to react, and then they turn up offering a solution. This is what they do. In the Middle East and Africa, they've used terrorism. In South America, they've used the drug cartels. This is what America does. They love regions destabilized so that you're too busy fighting than to be worrying about development. And while you're worrying about development, while you're worried about fighting, all you're thinking about is digging up your own resources as quickly as possible to give them so that they give you guns to kill each other quicker.
Terrible. Very, very terrible. Terrible situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was asking Washington Stanley before you came in. I said to him that if eventually, because for instance, even if they said to the ambassador, you're not allowed to come out of your embassy or your building and cut out all those communication, whatever, even if they put military or police around that area to say that he's not allowed, and if he does leave and come out, he will be met with some kind of force, not diplomacy. Okay? So if it gets to that point, if whatever happens and a fight starts, I did ask, do you think that NATO or America will join the fight so quickly? And on what grounds would that be?
Okay. Now, I mean, what force? I don't. I don't think there's going to be any guns shooting. It would just be a case of if he maybe tries to break the house arrest or blockade or whatever, they will arrest him He will not comply, obviously, but I don't think it will be a case of bullets flying. And in as to like to use something like that as, oh yeah, you see, let's go in. I still think that's enough. You see, what the West does is the West, before the West goes to war on you, you will know because they start building a case file. So they'll say, okay, yeah, we've seen activities that look like weapons of mass destruction or terrorists. Yeah, we've seen human rights violations, and it's things like this they'll point to as human rights violations. But there's always human rights violations.
Yeah.
It's like with Uganda. They started on Uganda over human rights violation because of LGBTQ. But hold on, how about all the Christians in Nigeria that have been paying for their own ticket to go to it, to go and cry religious clashes in Nigeria? Why are you guys still giving Buhari a stage at the UN instead of calling him out for human rights violations? But Museveni now, oh, how many LGBTQ are even in Uganda? And you're chasing him about. Meanwhile, in Nigeria, whole villages have been chased away and renamed. You know,
By
and then when you find out about the gold in Uganda,
ISIS and Boko Haram.
then when you find out that, oh, Uganda has, like we keep saying on this program, however many trillion tons or maybe dollars worth of gold, whatever, worth of gold, I know it's 13 trillion something worth of gold. Then you know what the whole thing is? Now they're looking for a building. It's the Museveni. It's not yet Museveni's turn. They are building a case file. In fact, this is my prediction, and I've put it even on Twitter. By this time next year, there will be a war in Niger, and this war will spread across the Sahel into Mali westward, eastward, towards two countries, two critical countries, Uganda and Congo, south, east towards Uganda, south towards Congo. And this war is for the last hoover up of Africa's resources before all these breaks and everything takes full effect. That's what this destabilization effort is by the West now. Because look, they're all bankrupt. You've seen house prices collapsing. Now they're doing twilight zone economics. They need a last grab of the resources because over the 500 years they were stealing our resources. They hoarded into private hands and wasted most of the ones they allocated for public spending. They wasted most of it. Yes, they built magnificent cities and everything, but why are they going broke? They didn't steal enough for it to be self-sustaining. Don't get me wrong, a lot of that loot is still sloshing around in tax havens, in the accounts of all this like so-called king, they are King Charles and Bill Gates and all those clowns. They are still, a lot of them still, a lot of that loot is still in private hands. But the one they allocate for public spending to keep their poor white masses, their poor white population on their side, obviously give them good roads, give them electricity so that they don't revolt and upend everything. They've wasted it. You see, it was never sustainable. Now they're seeing China literally about to push them out the continent they've been trying to rob for 150 years. And then the Africans themselves are waking up. The only way to slow all this down for China and the Africans is to instigate epic war, destabilize the. Remember, the reason why the West was able to conquer tropical Africa by the time they came was because that whole forest region had been destabilized by political slave raids by political Islam. They want to recreate the whole destabilization again, cross at each other's throats, keep us fighting, killing each other, while they just keep looting. Like it's going in Congo. Congo is destabilized, and as Congo is destabilized, they are looting. We also saw that their UN armored personnel carrier that overturned, and all diamonds poured out of it. What's the UN doing carrying Congo's diamonds?
United Nations.
United. What are they doing carrying diamonds for Congo? And then a lot of the coltan mines, apparently, in the middle of the jungle, you see a coltan mine, undeveloped, mud pit, and right next to it, airport. So as they are digging, straight into plane, flying.
So if United Nations, the so-called United Nations, is cutting away with DRC's diamonds, who's which country is going to be benefiting those diamonds that overturned in those vehicles of the United Nations vehicles? Which country do you imagine?
You see, the UN, World Bank, IMF, all these stooge organizations, they are all instruments of the US. And me personally, I believe the US is an instrument of Britain. Britain is a civilization that's supposed to have collapsed at least 150 years ago. But somehow they managed to stay in the game by riding off the back of America. And I know that Britain has a lot of investments, strings, eyes, ears, all sorts of things in America. And the CIA does not just operate willy nilly on their own without consulting MI6.
Yeah, that's fact. Yeah,
Interesting.
my
This is
six.
why Fela sang about the United Nations in the fashion he did. You know, it's so it is in times like this I wish people like Fela was still around to just understand, because these are people who are far ahead of their time.
Yeah,
You know, at a time where everybody was in cuckoo land, they saw it, they spoke about it, they sang about it. And we looked at them like crazy people, drug addicts, Igbo smokers.
conscious musician.
But they were the conscious ones. We were all sleeping.
Yeah, they were the ones who were awake.
Yes. I'll take this quick read from.
They see before us. They were
I'll take
ahead.
this quick read from Charles Odineye says, Africa has been deprived from develop. Yeah, I think I've taken that. It says even bullies like America bring their gangs for a fight. I think we're talking about even with all the technology America has, they bring their gangs to a fight. And France now is like a thief who has been caught red-handed and cornered. They have to throw these tantrums because it has worked in the past, but they know that now it is totally different. The reason the West will fan this as a coup is because they did not have a hand in the selection process, which I think, usually term free and fair elections. And he goes on to say, if it was military general that is pro France, then the media will be jubilating and singing his praise.
Praise, yeah,
But as it stands, they didn't put him there, so it's a problem.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's fact.
And let's see.
That's
Obi-Wan says, in his earlier days, Museveni was the West darling. That's true. He was a darling of the West, Museveni. In
yeah.
his earlier days. Starman, you're muted.
Sorry, I have to clear my throat. Yeah, there's something I tweeted the other day. Um, I said, I said, black people. I keep telling you guys that. Oh, sorry, one sec. I keep telling you guys that when criminals like the G7 and NATO make your laws and are the arbiters of your human rights, then why are you all surprised that them stealing your things becomes the norm and you break the law when you try go get back your things? So France now fighting to get her, sorry, Niger. France has stolen Niger's sovereignty. They've hammered it into international law. Everybody believes that's the international order, so-called rules-based international order that nobody knows where that came from. It's not you.
Mhm.
There is nowhere in any international law that or some American neoliberal nonsense. And then fighting to get back that sovereignty. And they're trying to make it look like Niger is breaking the law or committing a crime, or them going against their norm is abnormal.
Hmm.
They are always the one chasing people away. So this time people are chasing them away.
Absolutely. The audacity, I can imagine in their mind, the audacity. How do they say that in French? I'm just thinking of how it must have sounded in the palace there. How dare you? Did you talk back to me? Did you just say those words to me? Because in the past, all the leaders who go there just say, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. So how dare you question anything? So they will get used to it. Right now, it's still early days. They will cry, they will throw tantrums, they will bully, they will do everything. But when they've thrown all of these things and it doesn't work, there is not one single power that ever existed for eternity. There is a time where a power reaches its um
Change must always come.
yes, change is the only constant. No matter how powerful you are, there is a point where you will someone else, another power will come and will be greater than yours. There is not one single person, even in the Bible, whose power was never trumped by somebody else. Basically, yeah. So Starman, we've gone on for over an hour. We came on a little okay. We came on a little we came on a little earlier that before you joined in, so we will not be going on for too long. In other words, let's go on and just see how we can imagine what other than the wars and that Starman has been prophesying that will happen. Hopefully it doesn't. I hope you're a false prophet in this one.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Yeah. Other than that, let's paint a picture of what's to come and the scenarios, especially with all your um, experiences and discoveries from research. How is what is the possibility of another African nation having a scenario like Niger in the soonest
Okay,
time?
okay. To be honest, you know, why I said by this time next year that there'll be war is because when I look at what's going on, there's a lot that many of us still don't even factor in yet. China has a lot of investments in Niger. They've been awfully quiet all this while. And then everybody's talking about francophone. Oh, the people in francophone, they are breaking free, as if francophone is only Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, Guinea, the ones that have risen up. Nobody's talking about Cameroon, where there's a civil war going on. Actually, this time not even a coup for secession to break Cameroon in two. Nobody's talking about that yet. In fact, that's the world's worst kept secret.
Yeah.
That war has turned to nothing more than a genocide now. But still, the world refuses to talk about it. All this your UN and charity organ, none of them is talking about it. They had the World Cup in UAE or Qatar or whatever, and they were, oh, you're abusing workers. Yeah. Knowing fully well that that is just talk for the cameras. Nothing is going to happen. After that, they had some other event. I can't remember what event it was again. In Cameroon, with a war going on. Do you know they didn't mention him, not one word about the conflict in Anglophone Cameroon?
I think Cameroon is the
Which
next country
France?
that is due for military coup.
Who?
Cameroon. I
Right.
think
Which
their
France?
military,
France
their military,
sponsoring the
yeah,
francophone. France is sponsoring the francophone part of
Cameroon,
Cameroon.
yes.
Continue. Continue, Stanley.
I think Cameroon is long overdue for military coup because I've not seen a country like that. You know, the French part is being powered by France, and the southern part are just being like that. They are fighting each other, and their president is living overseas here for so many years. For so many years,
And
the sitting
his
president,
son is like a
yeah,
prince.
he lives over here in
Sorry.
somewhere in Switzerland, yeah, and he governs his country from here. It's only in Africa this kind of thing can happen, you know. And that is why, if you want to talk about military coup, they say no, the worst democracy is better than military. Which was it has all been worse democracy. It has all been criminality,
So
you
did
know.
you just say that the president of Cameroon lives in Switzerland,
Yes,
but he's a president of
but he's a
Cameroon?
president. Yes,
Oh my God. It's the first time I heard that one.
he
It's
lives
the first
here.
time I heard that one.
Yeah,
He can't even
he
walk
lives here.
properly. Just to climb stairs, he needs people like literally almost carrying him. But he leave power. No, no.
That is what they
So,
want. They want a
so
stooge, you know.
your
This is
postulation, Starman and Stanley, your postulation is that it might be Cameroon next because of the
yeah.
Anglophone and Francophone fight that has been going on for so long, you think?
Cameroon is long overdue for that. It's long overdue.
Yeah.
You know, it's long overdue.
And that other tiny country in south of Cameroon and Gabon, Equatorial Guinea.
Equatorial Guinea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
This
There are a lot of countries that are it's still coming.
is
There's a lot of
it's gradual
change coming.
process. It's gradually.
Coups,
It will happen. You
coups,
know,
and,
it will happen.
sorry, coups and self-determination movements. The one the word for me, the monumental change is going to be the self-determination movements, because the self-determination movement is literally for the first time Africans building the first real African state themselves, not the ones created for them by Europeans. That is going to be revolutionary. The coups, for me, that's still a starting step, a baby step nonetheless, but a step regardless.
It's a positive step. It's really a
Yes,
positive step. It's a welcome development. You know.
because yeah, on the outside, it looks like what's going on in Niger is just about kicking France out. But when you look inside, there's some ethnic tensions there, which, when you boil it all down, is still going to reduce to self-determination. When you boil it all down, the Tuareg in Niger, they are saying they want to break away, just like the ones in Mali as well. There's Tuareg in Niger, Mali, and Libya. They want to create their own nation now. Even
They
though
have to. They
the,
have to.
and
Africa has been about kingdoms. You know. With all this criminal democracy, just bring people, put them together, and be stealing their resources. You know. I think we
Well,
need
so
military
I
you
coup
think
know,
for Africa.
as a civilization, we evolve. So once upon a time, we were kingdoms, but we were not expecting to go back to that time of when we lived as kingdoms. Now we're talking about one Africa. We're talking about opening up the borders, the artificial borders.
no, it's not about going back to kingdoms. No, in fact, no. And also that opening borders, opening artificial borders, we talk about it flippantly. A lot of us, we don't really think deep about the implications of that opening borders. So first of all, about not going back to kingdoms. See, you have so for the Tuareg. Now, the problem with the Tuareg claim for secession or self-determination is that some of the land they claim ancestrally or in from antiquity actually isn't theirs. It's just lands they migrated into.
Mm.
Right. Now, the Yoruba, you find Yoruba in southern Nigeria, you find them in Benin, and you find them in Togo. Yeah. When the Yoruba people say they want to create a Yoruba nation, It's not about going back to an ancient Yoruba kingdom or anything like that. No. In today's world, it's about creating a nation that will make sure your people, number one, survive. Your language, the Yoruba
Survive.
language, survives. Your culture, the Yoruba culture, survives. An ethno-linguistic model of nation building. Not this nonsense, multicultural nonsense Europeans gave us that has never worked. And even multiculturalism in Europe has never worked. Angela Merkel said it herself. Multiculturalism doesn't work. They know. They know that when there's too
But
much
isn't
diversity,
that why, even, sorry to cut you in, even isn't that the reason why even here in the UK you have the Scottish, you have Wales, you have, and then they have their little enclaves that
exactly.
is
Even
respected.
see, the Scots want to break away. They are fighting for a second referendum now. Guess what? The Welsh too. They want to break away. They
It's
start murmuring
21
about a
hours.
referendum to break away from Britain. And even the most surprising one, Northern England has murmured.
Northern England or Northern Ireland?
No, not Northern Ireland. The North, Yorkshire, Liverpool, Manchester. About 2 years ago or 3 years ago, something like that, there was murmurings of them breaking away from the South. That London was monopolizing all the spending, all the capital projects like underground, all that, and that they produce more than they receive. And there were murmurings of them Northern England breaking away. And even when you go back historically and you look at Northern England and Southern England, Northern England was colonized by the Vikings. Southern England was colonized by the Anglo-Saxons. So, and then the Welsh are Celts. The Scots are Celts as well. In
So
fact, yeah,
if it's something that is not even now, it's raising its head that even here the so-called civilized world is not working. How then can it, the multiculturalism, idealistic multicultural world that um, they would imagine that we have, how is that going to thrive in Africa?
exactly. This is
Ye-
why I keep talking about secession, self-determination. See, in Africa, if we have an Igbo nation, a see, I keep telling Nigerians this. You guys, you're upholding a country where most of your population, like 75% of your population, does not even understand the language the Constitution is written in. So they don't even know what the Constitution is talking about. They don't understand the language the laws are written in. So if someone from the village who didn't go to any decent school is pulled up in court for whatever, as the judge is talking to him, he's just hearing gibberish. He doesn't know what's being talked about. And then they'll just tell him, this is your sentence. They'll translate for him. This is the sentence. How is that? Is that how to run it? Is that person really free? How about if the other person paid the judge and then they're just saying anything and you don't even know?
Hmm.
This is why, see, if the West did not colonize Africa, you would have had an Igbo nation, an Igbo state that would have developed along the lines of what we're trying to do now with Biafra. A state that the official language is not English. Because as I'm saying, theoretically, hypothetically, if we were not colonized, our number one language would have been Igbo, ensuring that the Igbo language will never face extinction. About 20 years ago, I read an article by some British academy in Britain saying that Igbo language was going to go extinct in like 20 years. And lo and behold, there are two Wikipedia pages, African languages that have gone extinct and the ones facing extinction. About 2, 3 African languages go extinct every week, believe it or not. And many are still going extinct. If you do not speak a language or write in that language will die. It's as simple as that. So if you have a
and
country
Igbo,
where
Igbo
your
is dying
language,
gradually.
eh,
And Igbo is dying gradually.
most African languages are dying gradually because we're all speaking French, English, Spanish, and Portuguese.
It is true because, sad to say, like, I can speak my language, which is an Ijo dialect, Calabari. However, do you know that when I reason and I think in English because I can't think in my language, my native language. Hence, the reason why I'm unable to express myself fluently in my language. So you can imagine a generation of people who can't reason or think in their language.
And then imagine their children who a lot of their
Justice.
children will be in diaspora, interacting in other languages. The ones in Nigeria, all the TV they watch is in English. And I remember when we were younger, in school, if you spoke your language, they said you spoke vernacular and you'll be beaten.
That's where it
No,
all
it's not
started
that
from.
happened.
That's
That's where
where
it
it
all
all
started
started.
from.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
Huh?
that's
Wrong
where it started
education.
from.
Yeah.
You know, so our languages are
Wrong
being pushed
education.
slowly into extinction. So the next generation, they are not even fluent in Igbo anymore because all their TV, cartoons, everything is English or French. Then imagine the generation after that, where
But
their
how
own parents
come?
can't
Let me
even
ask you,
speak the
Starman,
language
how
well.
come the Yorubas were able to surmount that challenge that a Yoruba person will raise their child or children in the West and those children will understand Yoruba 100%, but they've never lived in Nigeria?
There's
How were
still,
they able to do that? What was different? What did they do differently?
I mean,
It's at
you
home.
still get that across, even Igbo, like my own brothers. My brothers
It's
grew
at
up,
home. You're speaking
they
it
didn't
at
grow up in
home.
Nigeria, but they could still speak Igbo, which surprised me, you know. But there's still a debasement because that language is not, they don't open their mouths in everyday communication to speak it, So and it's not even just about the individual. It's about, see, the cornerstone of any culture is the language. Without language, that culture doesn't exist. So if you live in a society where that language is not primarily being spoken, then what culture exactly are you
Yeah,
practicing?
Charles Oduneye says because they are more educated and proud of their language, which is a factor, a major factor. From a very long time ago, the Yorubas were never ashamed to speak their language anywhere in the world.
Yes, yes, I agree.
But I
I
think the
agree.
Igbos were also having that complex when it came to speaking their language abroad. So that's the reason why Igbos would have been also hardly hit by having their language going into extinction as opposed to the Yorubas.
I mean, all African languages are being debased. I don't think any of them is spared from this.
Yeah, but it's
Every
in varying degrees.
The fact that you do not have an African country that runs with its language, with its indigenous language as the official language, you can only go so many generations deep before one generation you see that they don't even understand language anymore. How do you think Latin died?
Yeah,
Ancient Greek, how did that die? It slowly got debased and debased and debased over time. Now, fragments of it will survive, will morph into bits, or like it morphed into with some of the Celtic languages, some of the Germanic languages to form other things like French, English, you know. But Latin itself is dead. You know, even in Rome today, or even in Italy today, the language they speak is not quite Latin. It's morphed into something else, but it's still a Romance language.
right. Okay.
Yes.
Sad. Every time we come here, we talk about things and you just realize sad.
See, true self determination on the African continent is when the ethnic groups, I know they always call us tribes. We are not tribes. The Igbo so called tribe, which is actually not even an ethnic group like the Igbos, the Yorubas, the Hausas, these are not ethnic groups. These are civilizations, not just ethnic groups. Let alone the tribe is just a disrespect. The Igbos, 50 million. How many people are in Spain? How many million people in Spain? How many people in Iceland? But these are all countries.
Hmm.
How many people in Poland or Lithuania? But yet, you call the Igbos a tribe.
Right.
So the Igbos they were a civilization before the coming of foreigners, and they need to go back to being a nation state to represent that civilization, just like the Yoruba, just like the Ewe, just like the whoever else in Africa. We need to rediscover our identity, which means new nation states on the African continent that will use primarily their indigenous language as their languages. And I don't know why people always worry about interpretation. We have the technology to interpret. We use their indigenous languages as their language to write their constitutions, to write their laws, you know, and a return to their indigenous spiritualities. This for me is when I'll probably be dead before I see this. But hey, who knows? History sometimes, as they say, sometimes decades happen, nothing happens. Decades pass, nothing happens, and weeks pass, decades happen.
That's
You
right.
know,
Absolutely.
so so for me, true independence on the African continent will be when you see this model of nationhood, a country using the Igbo as an example, where Igbo religion is paramount, Igbo language is the official language, the education, the constitution, the laws are in Igbo,
You know,
even the science. Sorry,
yeah,
yeah,
that would apply for every single um civilization in Africa. Like I wanted
yes,
to ask that. Let me quickly take this read from Charles Oduneye before I carry on with what I wanted to say. Um, an Igbo man would want you to know that he's educated by bullying everyone around him to speak English. Hausa people also speak their language everywhere at any time. The civil war also to blame. And Obi-Man says, what about the manipulation of these smaller states by outsiders? Great. Oh, Obi-Man just took my thoughts that I wanted to express before I said I want to take the read, which is we're at a point where we're just coming from different fronts as Africans. There's a major crisis and a universal enemy of the African. But we keep distracting with so many other issues. My question is, Starman, what should be the protocol or the order of things in your imagination? Because these are important issues to be addressed, but they are issues that are, as far as I'm concerned, with the threat Africa faces right now, these should border not close to the top of the um I'm really struggling today with words. The hierarchy
mm,
of list of things to do, you know? So if we keep distracting, we're always talking this, we're talking here, a different thing. How could we find one voice to speak, to agree on a way forward as far as the common enemy is concerned? After we have ta- tackled these bigger problems with this common enemy, then we can come to the point where we begin to talk about these things.
okay. So
Isn't it
first,
putting the cart before the horse, or, you know,
first things first. The reason why Africans have no platform to plan is because we have no power. We control no state or state apparatus. And by virtue of that, control no institutions. If you think the AU or ECOWAS is an instrument that it represents Africans, that is supposed to work for Africans, I'm sorry, you got that wrong. Those are colonial. I mean, is it not the same colonial leaders that are still going to go and have meeting at the AU? So why are you surprised the AU is never going to work for you? How many wars has the AU stopped? I mean, in the middle of all the wars raging in Africa, like a year or two ago, the AU, all they were talking about was, official language, Swahili, new official language, Swahili. They didn't talk about the wars, you know. So the problem we have is that, and if I keep referring to all black people as a prison population on this planet. None of us is free. Anybody jumping around masquerading as our leaders is just a prison warder, controlling the prisons for the people that built the prisons. So if we're in prison, there's not much you can do, you know. So, like I said, we don't have a platform because there's no independent black polity or nation. And it's until you see, and this is why the greatest fear of the colonizers is self-determination. This is why they refuse to talk about Ambazonia, that's Cameroon, South Cameroon, and they refuse to talk about Biafra. Because they know that when these two countries become actualized, that nonsense they created in Africa in the in Berlin Conference will crumble. Those are the two first dominoes that once those two dominoes go, Ambazonia, Biafra, it's over. It's over.
So, in your opinion, we have to go back to nationhood first,
Yes,
finding, and
yes,
then we'll be able to speak in one voice, and then that will spill into the bigger picture of having
right.
Africa.
Okay, so first of all, as these current European countries in Africa are structured, we can't even work together within those countries, let alone cross border. That's number one. But with the emergence of Biafra and Ambazonia, and I'm so happy they're even next to each other. And historically, these are the same people. By virtue of being next to each other, there's so much genetic admixture between the two. You know, culturally, very similar. And altogether, we're talking about 60 billion people. Sorry, 60 million. Sorry, 60 million people. And this is just the fact that on its own, a very resource rich region, which I'm not even worried about, oh, if we actualize against the Western people's will. Oh, I'm not worried about sanctions. We have enough resources. We'll be too busy consuming our own resources to build new nations than who we have to sell it to for what? For colored paper? Nah, man. So this is going to inspire more self-determination movements. Like I've said several times on our programs, Africa has 54 European created countries. Out of those, there has been a history of about 47 self-determination movements. And about 22 or so of those are still active. People that still want to break away. You know, when you get that those two countries, Biafra and Bazonia, break away, they would provide not just inspiration, but a platform to aid anybody else that wants to self-determine. Because those two nations will understand, and if they best understand that they will need to, out of the old order of the African Union, they will need to create a new order of African states that don't align with Western interests. So the AU is currently made of European African states that are all designed to align with Western interests. So when you start seeing new self-determined African nations like Ambazonia, like Biafra, like the South Sudan, they are those ones. Well, it's like they'll split into three. They are going to have to form their own new African Union of new nations, who clearly understand that the West is not going to be happy, and is going to constantly be trying to use their states in Africa, like how they're using Nigeria now, to squash them. And then, if the ones who are going through coups now have some stability, they'll join up with those ones. And you see, just like how the BRICS is doing their own thing and sidelining the G7, this is what needs to happen. The AU, the current AU structure needs to be sidelined. And the old order with all these old borders need to be phased out.
Hmm. Okay. So we
What?
have to do these little things first before we start looking into a a borderless Africa, in other words. A borderless Africa. Or you don't think that the borderless Africa will work as well?
Now,
That's the best thing that
like,
could happen to Africa, you know.
sorry.
When it goes borderless, that's the best thing that can happen to Africa. When Africa become borderless, you know.
Now, the thing is, I don't think it will be Africa wide. It will be. Like I keep saying, I don't see a one superstructure pan Africa. I see it being a very regional thing, and is based on history.
Anna, just before you carry on, let me read Obi Man because what he's saying will also fit
Okay. Yeah.
into whatever response you want to give. He
Yeah.
says after South Sudan broke away, they fought a second war to determine who should rule. Warning.
Right. You see, this is what I'm saying. There's a reason why we must not be scared of breaking up into this ethnic homogeneous model. It is the best way to minimize and, in fact, to ensure or mitigate against genocide and war. When you have two ethnic groups stuck in one country, competing for scarce resources, you have set up a stage for conflict. And in fact, worst case scenario, genocide. I keep saying this. But when you have two groups, each in their own countries, even if one has more resources than the other, war is not something everybody wakes up and dreams of. Before war, the ones that don't have will find a way of doing trade. And that finding a way of doing trade means they will improve themselves. And should they even decide to do war, remember, they have less resources, which they want to go and fight for. They are hardly going to win. And people with more resources will hardly want to take resources of people with less. Africa is all about internal colonization on behalf of foreign colonizers, taking the resources of the people that have it from by those who don't. So we should not be afraid of going to this model of one culture, one language, one people, one country for your own security and insurance and the survival of your culture, the survival of your language, the survival of your people. Okay, Igbos and Hausa form a country now. Which language will be official? Will
Two
the Hausa people
languages.
start learning Igbo? Will they start learning, or will the Igbo start learning Hausa? Talk less of when you have it like Nigeria, 51 different groups.
Okay, what about if you're using Nigeria as an example, what about when they had the regional government? Didn't it work? Couldn't it have worked before?
Okay. So now, why I keep talking about Africa existing ultimately as regional blocks is because, like in Nigeria, a lot of that regional government, a lot of the people within those regions shared very similar cultures, even though it wasn't quite like in the north. I mean, come on, there was a Muslim part and a Christian south, even in the northern region. So, they didn't quite share, culture like that. Even there were even, and the houses are not the only group in the north. There's so many other groups that many of us, even me, don't even know their names. So, a country like Nigeria with 51 different ethnic groups, I don't actually see as breaking into 51 different countries.
No.
What I see happening is a lot of the groups that their languages are related, their cultures are very similar, will coalesce together, either into one polity or in a confederation. That's what I see happening. And I see this happening on an Africa-wide scale, where similar groups would coalesce into more like at that African scale, more than likely into confederations. So I like I described in our last episode, I see like 5 different regions in Africa. I don't quite see a one Africa. Now, some of the regions will work more closely with each other than others for various reasons. Now, one of those regions is going to be the forest, the Gulf of Guinea. So that's going to be all the way from like Sierra Leone, Sierra Leone, Liberia, all the way down to like Angola. These people are all similar, apart from genetically. Even the climatic zone is all forest. They are forest people. Their languages are similar, Niger Congo, and out of Niger Congo you get Bantu. You know, their history similar. They were the people primarily targeted for the transatlantic slave trade and trans-Saharan slave trade too. You know, so I see these people literally not really having any conflict with each other, and their cultures just plugging into each other. And then I see another region, and all these people also, by virtue of colonization, the background colonial religion they took on was Christianity. Now, the second region is going to be the political Islam belt from the Sahel to the Swahili coast. They are people who ancestrally they've lived in savanna regions. They have their own different languages, the Nilo-Saharan and Chadic languages, you know. And by virtue of colonization, their culture has a background of being influenced by Islam. And we all know that 90% of the wars going on in 90% of the wars going on the planet are going on in Africa. And 90% of the wars going on in Africa are going on in that Sahel region where Muslim North Africa meets Christian tropical Africa.
Yeah.
This is a huge clash of civilization. So I see them forming their own regional bloc, economic regional bloc. So that's two. Then there's the people on the Horn. Those ones, for some reason, they keep saying that they see themselves as closer to the people on the Arab Peninsula, and that's fine. Same thing with the people in the north of Africa. So with these so many divergent paradigms, to keep dreaming that we'll all one day just unify and hug for the sake of white people. Nah, everybody has a totally different paradigm. I mean, to me as a tropical African, those Arabs are still white people, but to a North African, he sees himself even closer to them than me. So how is my Pan-Africanism with him going to work? And this is why I keep trying to break down to people. It's going to start with small building blocks of these current European African countries being disintegrated. Not all of them will be. Some will find ways of getting or carrying on, however. But I imagine a lot of them, more than half, will be broken up eventually. And then they will reorganize themselves into regional blocks, confederations of regional blocks. Confederations meaning that they will each, as they break into this ethnic homogeneous linguistic model, they will each maintain their sovereignty even when they are coalescing into confederations of regions. Because that maintaining your linguistic and cultural sovereignty is critical to your culture surviving. If you go and erase borders, everybody mix everywhere. That's just another multiculturalism, but this time with Black people.
Interesting postulation. I tell you, I get you where you're coming from. I get you 100%. But it's difficult for me to imagine that we'll be able to achieve what your idea is before the bigger picture is achieved, because anyway.
You mean the bigger picture of a superstructure?
One Africa, borderless Africa.
You can't put the roof on a house before the house itself or before the foundation? See, if you don't get the units, the building blocks right, whatever you put on top is just a matter of time before it falls.
That's right.
And then this unifying Africa now, that attitude that a lot of people seem to have, a lot of Africans seem to have, no, let's just unify now. Forget all the problems we have, all the ethnic differences, just unify. Look at Nigeria, all the ethnic differences, they are at each other's throats. They can't even unify, talk less of unifying. And then
It's
secondly, how do you even want to do a unified Africa with European African countries? These are countries that were designed to work for Europeans. You now want to unify them. So who will this unified conglomerate of European African countries actually work for?
that's
This
an
is one of
act.
the reasons
That's an
I'm
act.
vehemently against the AFCTA.
Mm.
The fact that the AFCTA, what the AFCTA is going to do is that, so before, the Europeans had 54 points of control on the African continent. With the AFCTA, they will now only have 1 point of control, making things much more easier, more streamlined for them to pull our strings.
Hmm. You see why I say Starman Alpha indeed. Because if you didn't paint that picture, a lot of people will not imagine it to be that way. But it comes to the same argument we were having earlier on, Stanley, when I was talking about, even though people are making a case for the military coups that Dr. Arikana doesn't want to accept as a coup, is the fact that yes, democracy hasn't worked very much for Africa. However, the fact that the pretentious democracy that we have creates bottlenecks in certain circumstances that these people are unable to hijack overnight or impose overnight, even though it takes a process, it takes a longer process, as opposed to having a military leadership that has the blessing of the West, where one declaration is all it takes for things to happen and change. It's the same as to the picture that Starman has just painted, where, to whose favor is it when you have this one Pan-African dream real actualized with this European African nation still in existence? So that's a very valid one.
Yeah.
And Stanley, quickly,
Okay.
your final thoughts on this total discussion.
Yes, well, we have traveled a long road, and coming to an end, I can say that, like after I told you at the beginning, um, I'm down with the military boys, and and if some African states, if their military can rise up and take over this fictitious democracy, because this democracy is not even Europe is not even properly working, even though they are being suppressed, and their system was long built, and they try to suppress things with their social systems. The democracy, I don't think it's not working properly here, and it will not work in Africa. The best way is to restructure Africa, and who are the people to do it? The military, because with this democracy, and this will always tell us that democracy is good. Democracy is good. That we should be down with democracy, but democracy is not doing us good. But if military comes in, at least even if military hold our things won't lose. It will remain with us, but they will keep it down. Then these people, in the name of democracy, one stooge will be there, and some people will be coming from here and there and taking the resources of the country. It doesn't work. So I would say I'm down with the military. If they can take over Africa, that would be nice for me. There's
So
no
as far as they steal and it remains on the continent, you're fine with that. Instead of a foreigner coming and stealing, they can
yeah,
all be thieves, but they should steal and keep it at home. Yeah.
yeah. Let's just keep it at home. Than these democracy stooges, people will be taking things. Okay, in Niger Delta, they'll be burning ship here today. Tomorrow they catch another ship. They're burning. Who are they? Don't we have military again? Don't we have naval forces again? How is this possible? It's because of democracy. When military is there, nobody can come in. Nobody. Our things will remain with us. Like the money Abacha pushed abroad, they are still bringing it back up to today.
But that was a
They,
military government he stole and he took it outside. Remember now?
no. I'm just, I know, I know. They can see this military left with them, then they wouldn't take it abroad. But it's with these politicians like Yagudu. Yagudu is the watchman for Abacha. They go in and corrupt them, and they'll be taking this money away. But left with them alone, this money will be revolving within the country. You know, so to me, military is still the better option for me for now.
Okay. So far, so good. Starman.
I mean, I won't say I'm a fan of military government, but if that's what it takes, like I said, if I was growing up an activist and I had to choose between this hocus pocus democracy and military, I'll take the military because that's where I'll get access to guns, and that's the language they understand. I'll take the military. And to what Obiman said about small states, manipulation of small states by outsiders, this is what I said about regions. As long as that small, and also as long as that small state is operating with its true identity, it's going to be hard. And they've established themselves as a state. So let's take, for example, now a people are literally on the brink of extinction on the African continent, the pygmies. So let's say as self-determination takes root, we give, obviously we're not going to chase them away or wipe them away. It's my dream to see a pygmy nation in Africa and a Khoisan nation so that those people survive too. Now, a pygmy nation, yeah, where they are operating in their environment, functioning for themselves. Now they have power. It's not a case of the disparity. When white people turned up, shot one or two of them, they were afraid, they ran away, they rounded up them with guns, started telling them what to do, sending them to human zoos. It's no longer that. Today they have TV, they have gun. Eh? It will be harder for anybody to come and meet their politicians to say, oh, sell out your people. And besides, their system of politics will not be like this nonsense the West imposed on us. Remember, the pygmies, they've never had a king. They've never conquered anybody. Their political system was just destroyed and they've just found themselves, you know, out of control of their own destiny. So if they have power, if they are empowered, they will not. Outsiders can try, but hey, I'm even happy the Pygmy Nation is going to be near Biafra, and if anything, Biafra will make sure nothing happens to those people because we, Ndibo, we understand that nobody on this planet understands herbal medicine. Like those pygmies, they are the original forest people. They've been in those forests for 100,000 years. And then when you find out that almost all tropical medicine, all these your tablets, pills, all of us pop today, most of them were derived from tropical plants. Those people need to be protected. They are as their cornerstone to human survival on this planet. So it's not even a case of these states just exist and not mind what's happening in the rest. No, they are, and like I always say, these people all practice Ubuntu. I actually see an Ubuntu union. You see that forest? It's going to be an Ubuntu union. There's not going to be capitalism there. There's going to be a resource sharing polity where resources are shared. And you can see Nnamdi Kanu even has the spirit of this. Mazen Nnamdi Kanu said, when Biafra is actualized, all the countries in West Africa will get gas free so that the whole region is developed. Because he doesn't believe in beggar thy neighbor, that you should be rich while your neighbor is poor. This is part of the Igbo spirit. It's because our culture has been debased and a lot of us have been suppressed and now even practicing foreign paradigms. That's why all this
Interesting.
nonsense is happening to Africa and in our regions.
Interesting. Thank you, Starman and Stanley, the two S guys, and Susan Starman, Stanley, and
Susan.
Starman, Susan
Yeah,
Starman,
yeah, the
and
working group.
Stanley. The three S's. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Yes,
Can I add one more thing,
yes,
Susan?
yes. Sure, sure.
What I said about the AFCTA earlier. Okay, so if any of us know anything about central banks, we know that a central bank, if your country has a central bank, your population is essentially enslaved to the West, to the World Bank and BIS, Bank for International Settlements. That is the but so you have World Bank, IMF, they are here. Then BIS is even the one on top. BIS is the arbitrator for central banks around the world. So if your country has a central bank, then everybody in your country is an economic slave to the BIS. In fact, the West to go as far as, in fact, if you know all those countries that the West is declaring pariahs, many of them is because they don't have central banks. So they need a central bank. Come on, the clue is even in the name, central bank. They need a central bank to control your economy. If they control that central bank, they effectively control your economy. So this is why I said those 54 African countries, the West had 54 points of control from the colonial legacy. Yes, they were in control of it. It wasn't much of a problem. Yes, every now and then you see the Francophone countries try and do their own thing, but France still crushed it anyways. But what they were trying to do with the AFCTA, because I've been trying, who is behind that Afrexim Bank? Who is sponsoring it?
The financiers.
There's foreigners sponsoring that stuff. And then the UN backs it. The UN? Wait, when you realize the AFCTA, what it's trying to do by centralizing the trade and economies of all these African states, they're trying to just bring everything under one point of control, that Afrexim Bank, making it more easy for them to control, more streamlined.
Interesting.
This is why any such free trade zone being declared by Africans must be declared by an Igbo state on behalf of our Igbo people. What do we want from this? A Yoruba state on behalf of the Yoruba people. What do we want from this? An Ewe state, an Akan state, or whatever, Ashanti, or whatever state or kingdom. That's okay. Oh, this free trade zone. What do we want from this? Not these European colonial constructs that have never worked for the people. Do we really think AFCT is going to work for us? Or foreigners just come in with capital, buy up everything?
Yes, which is what happens all the time because you
Exactly.
find out that the shareholders are majorly nothing to do with people from the African continent. The monies are sourced from the
Exactly.
United States of America and Europe in
And remember,
cases.
remember, these foreigners, you can't even compete with them in terms of capital. They've been accumulating capital for 500 years from slave trade when you were capital to colonialism when you were still digging out your resources and giving them as capital till today that they are still stealing those resources with their companies.
Hmm. You know what,
You
Starman? Let's do this as a separate chat topic on a different day, the AFCTA, because this is something that we need to really dig into. We go and do our research on, all the basic, the pros and cons of the trade area and the financiers of that bank, and basically we'll just go and do a little more digging because it's a very large topic to have. And this is why I love what we do here, because we just take all these things that ordinary people will not just reason on its own, as having, even though it looks is painted to be the savior, the 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 honey or the butter on the bread, it actually probably has more poison in the long run in it. So
Mm.
let's come back on another day and talk about the um, AFCTA and see how is it is AF
See?
Africa
Yeah,
Free
AFCTA. Yes,
AFCF.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So we'll talk about it and let's learn one or two things about that and whether we should be excited or not, so that we can, you know, expand this conversation to people like Dr. Arikana and people like P.L.O. Lumumba who have bigger platforms and ask these
Mm,
questions and see if it's something they've actually also thought about
yeah.
or reasoned, you know. Anyway, thank you guys. Star Manaf, I know you had a lot of engagements, but we managed to make it. I am terribly tired. I'm overworked. I feel like I'm half asleep on this broadcast. I barely can even remember my name. Thank you guys for making it happen.
Oh,
And
oh,
yeah, I'll chat to you later. And Stanley, my big
All
brother.
right.
Why did I call you my big brother? I'm not even sure you're older than me. My brother.
Eh,
I'll catch you guys. Thank you and have a
all
good
right. Have
evening.
a nice evening.
Yes.
uh,
Yes.
take care.
All right, guys. Thank you for sticking through with us. And let's do this again next weekend, God willing. Or in the weekday. We'll see when we come back here again with probably guests to interview or just rub minds as we've done today. We'll just pick salient issues as we have on the continent. Niger is not going away anytime soon. So, yes, Niger is always going to be focal point moving forward because it is a situation that is still unfolding. And hopefully, we will have the bigger laugh at the end of the day. If you haven't liked, followed, or subscribed on all our channels, please do so. We're still unable to stream straight to Facebook, but we will be uploading this as well to Facebook. And have yourself a wonderful evening. Bye bye.